Hey guys, Cassie here. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing the Writing the Sequel tag brought to you by Caitlin Schmidt, and I will put her information in the description box below. This tag felt appropriate because I'm writing a sequel. So there we go. There are 8 questions to this tag, so let's get started. Question number 1. Do you know where your second book is headed, or are you completely lost? I definitely know where my second book is headed. I knew sort of most of the plot for the second book almost before, or at least sort of midway through writing the first book, which actually kind of made writing the first book a little hard towards the end because I started getting all these ideas for the second book, and so I wanted to write those, but I was like, okay, I need to finish this one first, obviously. So that happens to me a lot. I used to be really bad at ever finishing stories before I wrote my first book. That was the first time I ever really finished a long, my pen fell. That was the first time I ever really completed a long story from start to finish, because usually about halfway through I kind of start getting a little bored of the story, and then I think of some other idea and I'm like, ooh, that's exciting, I'll go do that instead. So I had to force myself to finish the first book, and I'm really glad I did. I love that book. But I definitely had a lot of ideas for the second book. I didn't have a full outline planned, so there was quite a bit of planning, but at this stage I have finished the whole outline, so I pretty much know exactly where the whole story is going at this point. So yay. Question number 2. Have you written the book all the way through, finished multiple drafts, or just now started it from scratch? Well, I wouldn't say I've just now started it, because I've been working on this book for oh gosh, a year or more. It's pretty bad. I've been pretty lazy with this one, but I have not finished the first draft. So I'm still working on the first draft. As of right now, I have finished chapters 1 through 5 and chapters 24 and 25. So the first 5 chapters and the last 2 chapters. And then I've also written a lot of little bits and pieces of scenes in that middle chunk. But I need to go back to the beginning, start writing in order, and then plug in those scenes as I go. So that's sort of the stage that I'm at right now. I know it's kind of a weird way to write things, but that's just how I do it. Question number 3. How do you handle shifting from book 1 to book 2 without there being an issue with character voice or any of the other things that could go awry? So for me, this was actually really easy because my character voice for my second book is completely different than it was in the first book. So the main character in my first book, Keep No Record, is criminal psychologist Sarah Parker, and she's the one who sort of helps the murderer guy begin his journey of redemption. She's sort of the catalyst that sparks the beginning of his story. And then the second book is the continuation of Jacob's redemption story. And in that book, Jacob is the lead protagonist, sort of narrating the story. And when I say narrating, I don't literally mean narrating because I don't write in the first person, but I write in sort of a third-person limited perspective. So yeah, my character voice is totally different in the second book, so I don't have to worry about that, really. As far as the rest of the question, anything else that could go awry, I mean, I haven't really stumbled across any big issues yet that are sequel related. Sometimes it can be a little hard to remember all the details of the previous book, so you gotta go back and double check yourself. Also, another thing that's kind of frustrating that I discovered is that sometimes there are things that I want to put in the second book that I feel like, man, this would have been good if I had some foreshadowing in the first book, but I'm already done with that, so I can't go back and add it. So that's kind of annoying sometimes, but other than that, I haven't really had any issues. Question number 4. Oh my gosh, my leg is asleep already. As you've been writing, do you feel your manuscript has the second book slump? If so, how do you plan to remedy it? So I wasn't really familiar with this term until I watched the original video for this tag by Caitlin Schmidt. I think I understand what she means. I think she's kind of referring to like when a second book in a like 3 or more book series feels maybe a bit unnecessary, or like there's not really enough going on. It's just sort of there to further the story along to get to the 3rd book. That hasn't really been an issue for me because I'm not gonna have a 3rd book. The 2nd book is the last one in the series. I don't know if you can still call it a series if there's only 2 books. But I did at the beginning sort of struggle with wondering if I should do a sequel. There were a lot of ideas for the 2nd book that I was really excited about, but then there was also a lot of unanswered questions. There was a big gap in the story where I just wasn't sure how I was gonna fill that time, and it felt a little bit like I was just trying to force the time to be filled. So there have definitely been a couple times that I've questioned whether or not I should even write this book or if I should just leave it at the first one. But ultimately I have decided that I really do love this story and it is very important to me. I just needed to figure out that middle part pretty much. I had a strong beginning and a strong ending, but the middle was just a little fuzzy. And once I realized how much I actually do love this story and I'm really passionate about it and I want it to be told, I just sat my butt down in the chair and figured out the middle part. So now I have a really good outline and I'm very excited about the story, and I don't feel like it's forced at all. I feel like I know where I'm going. I'm kind of past all of that getting over the 2nd book slump kind of stuff. So that's nice. Number 5. Is there a 2nd book that you aspire yours to do as well as? I don't really think there is. I'm not exactly sure how to answer this question. I think it might be a little bit more geared towards a larger series. I guess it's kind of a common occurrence for the 2nd book in a series, or even the 2nd movie in a series of 3 or more movies, to feel a little bit flat, with the obvious exception of the Spider-Man trilogy. The 2nd part of the story is usually always the worst one, or the one that people don't enjoy as much. But again, I think that's kind of more geared towards series that have 3 or more parts, and mine is just the 2. So I don't know, I don't really have an answer to that question, I guess. I just hope that people like it. That's really all that matters to me. Actually, primarily, I hope that I feel really proud of it and that I love the story. And if nobody else loves it, then that's fine, but I'm sure if I love it, someone else will love it too. Number 6. Do you feel like your 2nd book helps expand the world and the characters while furthering the plot, I can't freaking read this stupid question. Do you feel like your 2nd book helps expand the world and the characters while furthering the plot, or does it feel more like a bridge to your 3rd book? Well, again, clearly this question is not for me, but I will say if you are writing a 3-part series and your 2nd book just feels like a bridge between your 1st book and your 3rd book, that is a problem and you are doing something wrong. Don't get me wrong, the 2nd book is obviously going to be a bridge between the 1st book and the 3rd book, otherwise they'd be completely disconnected stories, but it absolutely should not be just a bridge. It has to expand the world and further the growth of the characters while furthering the plot. That's just how it has to be. It's not going to be a good story if it's just a bridge between the 2. So if you're answering that question and you feel like your story is just a bridge, then you need to figure some stuff out. You need to sit down and figure out what it is that this book alone accomplishes. Each book in itself, by itself, has to accomplish something. It can't just be part of the larger story. Number 7. How long do you estimate it will take you to get the first draft done? Or if you finished it, how long do you think it will take you to polish your work? So my original goal was to have the book completely finished and released before Christmas. So yeah, that's not gonna happen. So it's August now, and I would say I've finished maybe a little more than a fifth of the first draft. So clearly it's not gonna be finished and released by Christmas. That was a very ambitious goal. But if I could finish the first draft by the end of the year, I think that would be really cool, and I'd be pretty proud of that. So I guess that's kind of my new goal that I'm working towards. But I'm kind of one of those people that's like, this is my goal, but if it doesn't happen, that's okay too. I'm just enjoying the process of writing this story, and I want it to be as good as possible, and I don't want to force anything. So yeah, it'll happen when it happens. And last but not least, number 8. On a scale of 1 to 10, how excited are you for book 2? A freaking 10, of course. No, but seriously, I have actually kind of wavered quite a bit. As I mentioned before, there were times when I wasn't sure if I should even write this book, and I just felt totally uninspired. But when I really sit and think about it, I am super excited about this story. It's almost the reason I wrote the first book was to get to this one. Although of course the first book is its own story, and I love that book just on its own. But when I first came up with the idea for this story, basically it started out with an idea for a character, and that character was Jacob. I wanted to write a story about someone who is, by society's standard, just a really bad person, has done a lot of terrible things. And the question I asked myself was, what would happen if that person woke up one day and realized, oh my gosh, this is horrible. I've been living my life in a horrible way. I should not be doing these things, and I really want to change. So what would that look like? How would that person go about finding redemption and changing? And even if they did change within themselves and their heart was different and they forgave themselves and they moved on, would society ever be able to move on? Would society ever be able to look at that person and see them as anything more than just the label of murderer? So that was pretty much my original idea for the story, and those were the questions that I wanted to answer. And I didn't really answer a lot of them in the first book. First book was more of background, I guess, on Jacob's life and sort of building the relationship between him and Sarah, building that compassion and showing you who Jacob is and how he came to this point of realizing that he needed to change. And Sarah kind of helps him to start that journey. But in the first book, I mean, this isn't really a spoiler, but in the first book, that's kind of where it ends, is sort of at the beginning of him taking those first steps to change. And some of the big questions I wanted to answer with this overall story in my head were not only how is this person going to come to the point of realizing they need to change, which was covered in book 1, but even further than that, how are they going to go about doing that? What steps do they need to take to do that? How hard is it going to be? What obstacles are they going to have to overcome? How is society going to react to them? Is society going to accept them as a new person, or are they just going to say, you know, you're too far gone, you've done too many bad things, and we're done with you? I wanted to explore how someone who is coming out of a life of crime is going to survive in reality. How are things going to change when this person with this really horrible past and, you know, has spent years, well, I don't want to say that. Basically, I wanted to talk about how someone with that life and that past and those experiences is going to navigate the real world, and how they're going to be treated in society and what kind of unique obstacles that will bring about. And none of those questions were answered or explored at all in the first book. For me, from the very beginning of formulating the idea for this story and this character, a lot of what I wanted to explore was actually not going to come about until the second book. So I'm really excited to finally get to complete that story and say everything that I wanted to say from the beginning. It's also super exciting to have so many people really enjoy my first book and be really excited about the second one. That's something I've never experienced yet, obviously, since that was my first published work. I've never experienced working on a project that I know people are looking forward to because they kind of have an idea of where it's going. Most of the time when I'm writing, no one else knows what I'm writing. But with this, while people don't necessarily know what the story is going to look like, they know these characters and they're excited to see more of them. And that's been really motivating, especially through all of the rough patches of wondering if this story is really going to work out. Everyone's enthusiasm for this story has definitely helped me a lot to stay on track and to not abandon it to go write the other thing that I'm really excited about. I have been working on that too on the side. I am definitely committed to finishing this book first before I completely move on to the next thing. So that's it for this tag. Thank you to Caitlin Schmidt for all the awesome questions. I'm not going to tag anybody at the end of this one because it's specifically related to writing a sequel. And while I have met a couple author tubers, I don't really know if anybody's writing a sequel. Basically, if you are someone who is writing a sequel and you want to do this tag, that'd be awesome. Please let me know in the comments below if you do the tag so I can check it out. And as usual, if you like this video, hit the like button, and if you want to hear more from me in the future, subscribe below. My first book, Keep No Record, is available for purchase on Amazon, so check that out if you want, and then you will be fully prepared for the sequel when it finally comes out. And that's it. I'll see y'all next time. Have a great day. Bye.